Millionaire CEO attended his fiancée's graduation, couldn't believe the chief guest was his ex with a boy. Hi my beautiful family, welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories, your own family story channel. May the Almighty bless every woman in our lives with unshakable strength, a heart overflowing with love, and a spirit that inspires the world. May every woman who guides, nurtures, and uplifts her family feel honored, seen, and cherished every single day. You are the silent power, the backbone of every home, the light that turns darkness into hope. May your courage never falter, your wisdom always shine, and your sacrifices be celebrated, remembered, and blessed. I pray that your lives are filled with health, happiness, and endless blessings. May your hearts be free from sorrow, your steps guided by divine light, and may love surround you in every moment. You deserve the highest respect, the deepest honor, and the purest love for everything you give without asking anything in return. If your heart is true, like the video. If your love is real, write, "I am with Mr. Peter." Ashton Turner had learned to smile on command. A skill perfected over 5 years of board meetings, charity galas, and pretending his life had turned out exactly as planned. Today's smile felt different, heavier, like his face might crack under the weight of it. "Babe, we're going to be late." Molly Bradford adjusted her fascinator in the rear-view mirror, the tiny feathered thing perched on her blonde hair like an overpriced bird. "I didn't spend 2 years on this MBA to miss my own graduation." Ashton guided his Tesla into the Grandview University parking structure, the concrete smell mixing with Molly's perfume, something floral and expensive that never quite suited her. "We're 40 minutes early," he said, keeping his voice light. "You'll walk across that stage, collect your diploma, and I'll be the proudest fiancé in the room." She beamed at him, and guilt twisted in his chest. Molly was good, kind, came from the right family, understood his world, never asked questions that cut too deep. His mother adored her. His business partners approved. She checked every box that mattered. Except one. She wasn't Stephanie. The thought arrived uninvited, the way it always did, usually at 3 in the morning when Molly slept beside him and he stared at the ceiling, remembering a different woman's laugh, a different kind of fire. He shoved it down, buried it under the weight of logic and time and the future he'd already committed to. The auditorium buzzed with proud families, graduating students in royal blue caps and gowns, and the particular energy of endings masquerading as beginnings. Ashton followed Molly through the crowd, his 6'2" frame drawing glances from mothers eyeing him like prime real estate for their daughters. "Mr. Turner," a university administrator materialized beside them, clipboard clutched to her chest. "We're so honored you could attend. Your donation to the business school." "Just here to watch my fiancé graduate," Ashton interrupted smoothly. He'd learned to deflect gratitude about money. His wealth made people either fawn or resent him, and he'd grown tired of both reactions. Molly squeezed his arm, her engagement ring catching the light, 3 carats, cushion cut, flawless. He'd proposed 4 months ago at his mother's insistence, and Molly had said yes before he'd finished the question. Sometimes he wondered if she'd actually heard what he asked or just saw the ring. "I need to line up with my class," Molly said, kissing his cheek. "The ceremony starts in 20 minutes. "Oh, did you see who the chief guest is?" "I'm dying." Ashton raised an eyebrow. "Should I be worried?" "Stephanie June," Molly practically squealed. "The architect? She designed the Meridian Tower in Manhattan, the Harper Museum in Boston. God, she's only 31, and she's already a legend. I've been obsessed with her work since undergrad." The world tilted. Ashton heard his own heartbeat in his ears, a dull, heavy thunder that drowned out everything else. "What?" "Stephanie June," Molly repeated, oblivious to the fact that her fiancé had stopped breathing. "I can't believe the university got her. She barely does public appearances anymore. Apparently she's very private." She glanced at her phone. "I have to go." "Love you." She disappeared into the sea of blue gowns, and Ashton stood frozen in the aisle, his mind fragmenting into 1,000 pieces of a past he'd spent 5 years trying to forget. Stephanie. Here. Today. Ashton Turner, is that really you? He turned to find Devon Matthews grinning at him, his old college roommate and current business partner looking distinctly out of place in a room full of graduate students. Devon's daughter was graduating too, the only reason their paths had crossed today. Devon. Ashton's voice sounded strange to his own ears. When did you get here? 10 minutes ago. Jade's around here somewhere, probably taking selfies. Devon studied Ashton's face. You look like you've seen a ghost. What's wrong? Before Ashton could answer, the lights dimmed. A hush fell over the auditorium. The ceremony was beginning. He moved on autopilot, finding his seat in the family section, his mind screaming static. Devon slid in beside him, still watching him with concerned eyes. But Ashton couldn't form words, couldn't think past the single impossible fact hammering through his skull. Stephanie was here. The dean approached the podium, voice booming through speakers about excellence and achievement and futures bright with promise. Ashton heard none of it. His eyes locked on the side entrance where the faculty and special guests would enter. Then she walked in. 5 years evaporated. Stephanie June moved with the same quiet confidence he remembered. Shoulders back, head high, every step deliberate. She wore a tailored navy dress that hugged curves he'd once known better than his own body, her dark skin glowing under the auditorium lights. Her hair was different, shorter now, a sleek bob that framed her face, but everything else was devastatingly familiar. The curve of her neck, the way she held herself, the exact shade of her lips. That's her, Devon whispered. That's the chief guest? Ashton couldn't speak. Couldn't move, couldn't do anything but watch as Stephanie took her seat on the stage, her expression composed and professional, giving no indication that her world had just imploded the way his had. Then, her eyes swept the audience and found him. Time stopped. Ashton watched the recognition hit her, saw the exact moment her careful composure cracked. Her eyes widened just slightly, her hands gripped the armrests of her chair. Color drained from her face, then flooded back, her chest rising with a sharp breath. She looked away first, jaw tight, gaze fixed on some point above the audience's heads. Devon grabbed Ashton's arm. That's her, isn't it? That's Stephanie? Yeah, Ashton managed. His voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. That's her. Jesus Christ, Ashton! I didn't know, Ashton said. I had no idea she'd be here. The ceremony blurred past. Students' names were called. Diplomas were handed out. Families cheered. Ashton registered none of it. His entire focus narrowed to the woman on stage, who refused to look at him again, who sat with perfect posture and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Then movement caught his attention. Backstage, partially hidden by the curtain, a small boy darted into view. Maybe 4 years old, wearing tiny dress pants and a button-up shirt that was already untucked. He had a name tag pinned crookedly to his chest. Ashton's heart stopped. The child had his eyes, his exact eyes, that specific shade of dark brown with amber flecks that his mother always said came from his grandmother. And there, when the boy smiled at someone off stage, a dimple appeared in his left cheek. Ashton's dimple, his grandmother's nose, his jawline, softened by youth but unmistakable. The boy tugged on a woman's hand, someone who looked like Stephanie's sister, Naomi, though Ashton couldn't be sure from this distance. The child was chattering, animated, full of the boundless energy of a 4-year-old with no interest in sitting still. Naomi bent down, whispering something, and the boy nodded reluctantly, staying put but fidgeting with the name tag on his chest. Ashton's vision tunneled. He leaned forward, squinting at the tag, trying to read it. The boy turned slightly, and the light hit the name tag just right. Hardy June. The world went silent. Ashton did the math he'd sworn he'd never do again, counted backward from the child's age to 5 years ago, to the last time he'd seen Stephanie, to the last time they'd been together before everything fell apart. 4 years old, 5 years since she'd left, 9 months of pregnancy. The numbers aligned with perfect, devastating clarity. Ashton. Devon's voice sounded far away. Ashton, whose kid is that? On stage, Stephanie stood to deliver her keynote address. Her voice filled the auditorium, strong, clear, the voice that used to whisper his name in the dark, talking about resilience and second chances and building something from nothing. But Ashton wasn't listening to her words. He was staring at the boy backstage, at Hardy, at the child who had his face, his eyes, his smile, at his son, the son he'd never known existed. Stephanie's voice wavered just once on the word love. Her eyes flicked to Ashton for a fraction of a second, then to the boy backstage, then back to her notes. And in that moment, Ashton understood everything. She knew he was here. She knew he'd seen Hardy, and she was terrified. The applause erupted as Stephanie finished her speech. Students threw their caps in the air. Families rushed toward the stage. Devon was saying something, asking questions, but Ashton couldn't hear him over the roaring in his ears. He stood slowly, his legs unsteady, his entire world rewritten in the span of a single afternoon. Somewhere in this auditorium, his fiancée was celebrating her graduation, and somewhere backstage, his son, was waiting for a mother who'd kept the most devastating secret of Ashton's life. The question wasn't what happened 5 years ago. The question was, what the hell happened now? Chapter 2. When lightning struck 6 years earlier, Ashton Turner believed in exactly 3 things: building empires, honoring contracts, and the fiction that love was something other people wasted time on. Then Stephanie June walked into his conference room, and his entire belief system collapsed in under 30 seconds. "Mr. Turner, thank you for seeing us." Her voice hit him first, warm, professional, with an edge that suggested she didn't need his approval, but would take his money if the terms were right. "I'm Stephanie June from Harmon & Associates. We're here to pitch our vision for Turner Heights." Ashton extended his hand for a polite shake, the way he'd done 1,000 times before with architects, contractors, investors. Business handshake, firm grip, eye contact, standard protocol. The moment her palm touched his, electricity shot up his arm. He watched her eyes widen, just a fraction, and knew she'd felt it too. That impossible spark that scientists claimed was just neurons firing, that poets insisted was fate, that Ashton had always dismissed as biochemical nonsense, until now. "Miss June," his voice came out rougher than intended. "Please, sit." Greg Hutchins, Ashton's business partner, shifted uncomfortably beside him. The other architects at the table, 2 middle-aged white men in expensive suits, looked annoyed that Stephanie had spoken first. She was the youngest person in the room by at least a decade, the only woman, and clearly the one they'd brought to check a diversity box on the proposal. They had no idea she was about to eat them alive. Stephanie opened her portfolio, spreading renderings across the mahogany table. Turner Heights is slated for the Old Fourth Ward, a neighborhood with deep cultural roots that's been systematically overlooked for investment. Your typical developer would drop in luxury condos, price out the existing community, and call it progress. One of the senior architects cleared his throat. "Ms. June, perhaps we should focus on the financials." "I am focused on the financials," Stephanie said smoothly, not even glancing at him. "Because gentrification is expensive. You spend millions displacing people, dealing with protests, managing PR nightmares, and you still end up with half-empty buildings because you've killed the soul of the neighborhood." She looked directly at Ashton. "I'm proposing something smarter." Ashton leaned forward. He'd sat through 50 pitches for this project, all variations of the same luxury tower with the same amenities, the same predictable profit margins. I'm listening. Mixed income housing. Stephanie's eyes sparked. 30% affordable units, 40% market rate, 30% luxury. Ground floor retail space for local businesses. Community center with subsidized rent. Rooftop gardens maintained by neighborhood residents. She slid a rendering toward him. You're not just building apartments, Mr. Turner. You're building a community that sustains itself. The senior architect scoffed. That's a lovely social experiment, but the returns will exceed your luxury-only model within 7 years, Stephanie interrupted, producing a spreadsheet. Lower vacancy rates, tax incentives for affordable housing, positive press that increases property values in your other developments, and here's the part you'll care about. The city is offering a 15-year property tax abatement for projects that meet these exact criteria. Silence filled the conference room. Greg whistled low. Is that true? Announced yesterday, Stephanie said. You gentlemen were probably too busy designing glass towers to notice. Ashton bit back a smile. The senior architects looked like they'd swallowed glass, and Stephanie sat there, calm as still water, destroying their egos without raising her voice. He was in serious trouble. The proposal is compelling, Ashton said, keeping his tone neutral. I'll need time to review the numbers, but I'm interested. Greg, can you walk the other gentleman out? Ms. June, if you could stay, I have some additional questions about the community center projections. The senior architects gathered their materials, shooting dark looks at Stephanie. She ignored them entirely, her attention fixed on Ashton with an intensity that made his pulse spike. The door clicked shut. They were alone. So, Stephanie said, a smile playing at her lips. Were those questions about the community center real, or did you just want to get rid of those walking cliches? Ashton laughed, genuinely laughed, for the first time in months. Both, though I'm starting to think the community center is the least interesting thing we could discuss. Careful, Mr. Turner. I'm here to sell you architecture, not entertain you. What if I want both? Stephanie tilted her head, studying him. Then you're going to have to work a lot harder than this. I don't date clients. Good thing I haven't hired you yet, Ashton said. Have dinner with me, tonight. Stephanie stood, gathering her portfolio. For a moment, Ashton thought she was leaving. Then she pulled a business card from her bag and wrote something on the back. Soto, 8 o'clock. And Mr. Turner? She met her eyes. Don't be late. I have very high standards. Greg returned 5 minutes later, finding Ashton still staring at the business card. Please tell me you're not doing what I think you're doing. It's dinner, Greg. It's the beginning of something, and we both know it. Greg leaned back. Your mother is going to lose her mind. She's already got a list of appropriate women for you. Stephanie June has a master's in architecture from MIT, Ashton said quietly. She's brilliant, fearless, and just revolutionized our approach to affordable housing. I don't give a damn which fork she uses. Greg whistled. Yeah, you're gone. That night, Ashton arrived at Soto early. Stephanie was already there, wearing a dress the color of midnight that made her skin glow like amber in candlelight. You're early, she said, as he sat down. So are you. Ashton, he corrected when she called him Mr. Turner. And I'm actually terrified. That got her attention. Of what? That I've already decided this is the most important dinner of my life, and you're just here for the free meal. Stephanie laughed, a real laugh, uninhibited and bright. The confidence, the honesty, and the self-deprecation, all in 30 seconds. You're dangerous. They talked through 4 courses, about architecture and real estate and the Atlanta skyline, about growing up, Stephanie in a working-class neighborhood where she learned to dream big, Ashton in a mansion where he learned that wealth couldn't buy warmth. At midnight, the restaurant staff started hovering, ready to close. I don't want this to end, Ashton said. Then don't let it. They walked through Piedmont Park, and Ashton realized this was what people meant when they described connection. Not just attraction, but recognition, like finding someone who spoke a language he'd been waiting his whole life to hear. "I need to tell you something," Stephanie said, stopping on a bridge overlooking the lake. "I don't do casual. I don't date for fun or to pass time. If this is just entertainment for you—" "It's not," Ashton interrupted. "Stephanie, I've spent my entire life building things, companies, buildings, empires, but I've never built anything that mattered until right now, standing here with you, trying to figure out how to convince you that I'm serious." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she kissed him. The world stopped. Every cliché Ashton had ever dismissed as fiction suddenly made perfect sense. Fireworks, lightning, the feeling that the ground beneath his feet had fundamentally shifted and would never be the same. When they finally pulled apart, Stephanie was smiling. "Okay, we can do this." "Do what?" "Fall in love," she said simply. "Because I think we already started." She was right. Within 2 weeks, they were inseparable. Within a month, Ashton's friends stopped inviting him anywhere without her. Within 3 months, his mother met Stephanie and actually smiled, a genuine smile, not the polite grimace she usually reserved for women Ashton dated. Devon pulled him aside at a charity gala, watching Ashton watch Stephanie across the room. "You know everyone here is talking about you two, right? Let them talk. They're saying they've never seen you like this. Happy, human, like you finally figured out what you've been missing." Ashton didn't take his eyes off Stephanie. She was talking to a group of donors about urban renewal, animated and passionate, making them believe in something bigger than themselves. "That's because I was missing her. I just didn't know it yet." Turner Heights broke ground 6 months after that first pitch meeting. Stephanie and Ashton stood side by side at the ribbon cutting, and someone from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution took a photo that ended up on the front page of the business section. They looked at each other in that photo the way people look at miracles, awed and grateful, and slightly terrified by the magnitude of what they'd found. Ashton's assistant framed the photo and put it on his desk. He looked at it every single day and thought the same thing. This is what people search their whole lives for, and most never find it. He'd found it in a conference room on a random Tuesday, and he wasn't letting go. But fate, it turned out, had other plans. And those plans started with a phone call on a Wednesday afternoon that would destroy everything Ashton thought he knew about his family, his father, and the foundation his entire life was built on. Chapter 3. The kingdom they built, Atlanta, had a new power couple, and they weren't subtle about it. Ashton and Stephanie became the pair people pointed at in restaurants, the relationship other couples measured themselves against, not because they tried to be noticed, but because it was impossible not to notice the way they looked at each other. "You two are nauseating," Greg announced one afternoon, walking into Ashton's office to find Stephanie perched on his desk, going over blueprints. "Seriously, it's like watching a romance novel with a construction budget." Stephanie grinned. "Jealousy looks terrible on you, Greg. I've been married 15 years, and we don't look at each other the way you two do after 6 months." "That's because you take each other for granted," Ashton said. Stephanie laughed, hopping off the desk. "I'm a terrible influence." But it wasn't just physical attraction. It was the way they pushed each other, the way Stephanie called Ashton out when he got too focused on profit margins, the way Ashton encouraged Stephanie to dream bigger, pitch bolder, take up space in rooms that wanted to diminish her. Ashton's mother hosted a dinner party 3 months into their relationship. Ashton had warned Stephanie these events were performative, his mother's way of showing off. "She's going to test you," Ashton said in the car. "Ask questions designed to make you feel small." "Baby, I've been judged my whole life," Stephanie said calmly. "I'm a black woman in architecture. Your mother is amateur hour." She was right. Victoria Turner greeted them with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Ashton, darling, and this must be the famous Stephanie June." "Mrs. Turner, thank you for having me." Stephanie's handshake was firm. "Your home is stunning. The crown molding is original, isn't it? Late 19th century? Victoria blinked. Yes, actually. How did you know? I did my thesis on preservation architecture. You've maintained it beautifully. And just like that, Victoria's icy facade cracked. By dessert, Ashton's mother was showing Stephanie family photos. Devon leaned over and whispered to Ashton, "Your mum likes her. I've never seen Victoria Turner like anyone who wasn't born into the junior league." "Stephanie has that effect," Ashton murmured. "She makes people want to be better." Victoria pulled Ashton aside in the foyer. "I like her. She's smart, accomplished, and she doesn't need you, which means when she chooses you, it actually means something." His mother's eyes softened. "I've never seen you happy, Ashton." "Not really. But with her, you glow." It was the kindest thing his mother had said to him in years. Turner Heights rose from the ground over the following months, becoming their shared masterpiece. Stephanie practically lived on the construction site. Ashton showed up most afternoons, ostensibly to check on the investment, but really just to watch her work. "You know, people are talking," Stephanie said one evening, finding him watching her. "Let them talk. They say you're distracted, that you're spending too much time here." Stephanie walked over, concrete dust on her jeans, hair in a messy bun. "Ashton Turner, are you neglecting your empire for me?" "I'm investing in my future," he corrected, pulling her close. "This building, this project, this is the only thing that matters." Devon's wife threw them a dinner party on their one-year anniversary. Their friends filled the Matthews home, watching Ashton and Stephanie's relationship like a masterclass in how love should look. "Speech!" someone called out. Ashton stood, pulling Stephanie up with him. "A year ago, I thought I had everything figured out." He looked at Stephanie. "Then this woman walked into my conference room and destroyed my entire life plan in the best possible way." People laughed, but Ashton kept going. "Stephanie makes me want to be better. She's brilliant and fearless, and she sees the world not as it is, but as it could be. And somehow she sees that in me too." Devon raised his glass. "To Ashton and Stephanie, making the rest of us look bad for a solid year." Later, Devon pulled Ashton onto the back porch. "I need to tell you something. You're scaring me. I've been married 10 years. I love Rebecca. But watching you and Stephanie, I'm jealous. Because what you two have, that intensity, that partnership, most people never find that. Ever." Ashton looked through the window at Stephanie, laughing with Rebecca. "Don't take it for granted," Devon continued. "If you lose this, you'll spend the rest of your life trying to find it again." "I'm not losing her," Ashton said firmly. "Whatever it takes, I'm not losing her." It was a promise he meant with every fiber of his being. He had no idea how impossible that promise would be to keep. 3 months later, Turner Heights held its grand opening. The mayor spoke. The press covered it. But Ashton only had eyes for Stephanie, radiant in a red dress, giving interviews about architectural vision. "She's going to be famous," Greg murmured. "This project is going to launch her into the national spotlight." "Good. She deserves it." That night, they stood on the rooftop of Turner Heights. Their building, their vision, made real. The city sprawled beneath them. "I have something to tell you," Stephanie said. Ashton's heart leapt. "I got an offer," she continued, "from Kendrick and Associates in New York. They want me to lead their affordable housing division. It's massive, Ashton. The kind of platform I've been working toward my entire career." The world tilted slightly. "New York," Ashton repeated carefully. "I know it's far, and we're here, and we've built this life." She stopped. "But I can't stop thinking about it." Ashton was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Take it." "What?" "Take the job, Stephanie. This is your dream. I'm not going to be the man who holds you back. But we'd be in different cities. Then I'll move." The words came easily, because they were true. My company can operate from anywhere. We've been talking about expanding to New York for years. This is the perfect excuse. Stephanie stared at him. You'd move to New York for me. I'd move to Antarctica for you, Ashton said. Stephanie, you're my partner, my future, the person I want to build the rest of my life with. So yeah, if your dreams are in New York, then my dreams are in New York. She kissed him with urgency that took his breath away. I love you, she whispered. I've loved you since that first dinner, but I was too scared to say it. I love you too, Ashton said, and I'm going to prove it every single day for the rest of our lives. They had 3 more months of bliss, 3 more months of planning their move to New York, of dreaming about the future. 3 more months before Ashton's father died, and with him, every single promise Ashton had made shattered into pieces so small he'd spend the next 5 years trying to put them back together. Chapter 4. The Crash. Ashton's phone rang at 2 in the morning with the kind of call that rewrites lives. His father was dead, massive heart attack, gone before the ambulance arrived. No warning, no goodbye, just gone. Stephanie held him while he shattered, her arms the only thing keeping him from flying apart completely. I'm here, she whispered into his hair as he sobbed. Baby, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. The funeral was 3 days later. Ashton moved through it like a ghost, greeting relatives he barely knew, accepting condolences from business associates who'd respected his father more than Ashton ever had, standing beside his mother who wore black and grief like armor. Richard Turner had been distant, exacting, impossible to please, but he'd been Ashton's father, and now he was gone, and Ashton didn't know how to process the contradiction of grieving someone he'd never quite loved. Stephanie stayed close, a steady presence in the chaos. She fielded phone calls, organized food deliveries, ran interference when relatives asked inappropriate questions. Devon showed up with coffee and silence, knowing Ashton needed presence more than words. Then came the reading of the will. Ashton sat in his father's attorney's office. Mahogany paneling, leather chairs, the smell of old money and older secrets. His mother sat rigid beside him. Stephanie had offered to wait outside, but Ashton needed her there, needed her hand in his. The attorney, Walter Brennan, cleared his throat. Before we begin, I need to inform you that there are complications. Mr. Turner's estate is more complex than anticipated. Meaning? Ashton asked. Walter slid a folder across the desk. Your father had another family. The words didn't make sense at first. Ashton stared at the folder like it was written in a foreign language. Excuse me? Victoria's voice was ice. Richard Turner maintained a relationship with a woman named Linda Hartley for over 20 years. They had a son together, Nathan Hartley. He's 23 now. The office went silent. Ashton opened the folder. Inside were photos, his father with a woman who wasn't his mother, smiling in ways Ashton had never seen, and a boy who looked disturbingly like a younger version of Ashton himself. There's more, Walter continued. Turner Enterprises has significant undisclosed debts. Your father borrowed heavily to maintain both households and fund several failed investments. The company is currently insolvent. Victoria stood abruptly, her chair scraping against hardwood. That's impossible. Richard built that company from nothing. And he ran it into the ground trying to maintain his double life, Walter said gently. I'm sorry, Mrs. Turner, but the estate is bankrupt. The house, the cars, the assets, it's all going to have to be sold to cover debts. Ashton couldn't breathe. His father, the man he'd spent his life trying to impress, trying to measure up to, had been living a lie, had another son, had destroyed the family business through deceit and desperation. How much? Ashton heard himself ask. 8 million, give or take. The number landed like a physical blow. I can cover it, Ashton said. His own company was worth significantly more. He could liquidate assets, take out loans, restructure. There's one more thing, Walter interrupted. Nathan Hartley is contesting the will. He's claiming rightful inheritance as Richard's son. His attorney is arguing that he's entitled to half the estate, which, given the debts, means he's entitled to half the burden as well. But he's refusing that. He wants assets without responsibility. Of course he does, Victoria said bitterly. Ashton looked at the photo again. Nathan Hartley, his half-brother, a person he'd never known existed, now trying to profit from the wreckage of their father's lies. That night, Ashton sat in his penthouse, staring at the Atlanta skyline. Stephanie brought him whiskey he didn't drink. "Talk to me," she said quietly. "My entire life was built on a lie." His voice sounded hollow. "Everything I thought I knew about my father, my family, it was fiction." "You're not your father, Ashton." "Aren't I? I built my company using his methods, his connections. What if I'm just as much of a fraud as he was?" "Stop." Stephanie knelt in front of him, forcing him to look at her. "You are nothing like him. You're honest, loyal, decent. You don't keep secrets or live double lives. You're a good man, Ashton Turner." He wanted to believe her. The next 3 months were hell. Ashton worked 20-hour days trying to save his father's company, honor the debts, manage the legal battle with Nathan Hartley. He stopped sleeping properly, stopped eating regularly, became someone Stephanie didn't recognize, cold, distant, consumed by obligation. "You're scaring me," Stephanie said one night, finding him still at the office at midnight. "This isn't healthy. I don't have a choice." "Yes, you do. You could let the company go, file bankruptcy, start over, and abandon everyone who worked for my father, the employees who did nothing wrong. I can't do that, Stephanie. But you can abandon me." The words hung in the air between them. "I'm not abandoning you," Ashton said, but even he heard how weak it sounded. "You cancelled dinner 3 times this week. You haven't touched me in 2 weeks. You barely look at me anymore." Stephanie's voice cracked. "I'm losing you, and I don't know how to stop it. I just need time. Time. Ashton, we were supposed to move to New York next month. I turned down the job because you kept pushing back the timeline, and now I don't even recognize you." Guilt and rage warred in Ashton's chest. He knew she was right, knew he was destroying the best thing in his life, but he didn't know how to stop the spiral. "Maybe you should take the New York job after all," he said quietly. Stephanie flinched like he'd struck her. "What?" "This is going to take months to resolve, maybe years. I can't ask you to put your life on hold while I clean up my father's mess." "You're not asking. I'm choosing to stay, but you shouldn't have to choose." Stephanie stood, tears streaming down her face. "Don't do this. Don't push me away because you're hurting. Let me help you, Ashton. Let me be here for you the way you've been there for me." "I can't." The words tore out of him. "Stephanie, I can't drag you into this disaster. You deserve better." "I deserve you," she shouted. "The real you, not this shell who's forgotten what we have." They stared at each other across the office, the distance between them suddenly insurmountable. Ashton's mother chose that moment to arrive, her face drawn with grief and stress. She stopped in the doorway, taking in the scene. "Stephanie, dear, could you give us a moment?" Victoria's voice was strained. Stephanie looked at Ashton, waiting for him to tell his mother to leave instead. But he didn't. He just nodded. She left without another word. Victoria closed the door. "You need to focus, Ashton. This legal battle with Nathan, the company restructuring, it's taking everything you have. You can't afford distractions right now." "Stephanie isn't a distraction." "No, she's a complication." His mother's voice was gentle but firm. "Darling, I know you care for her, but she's talking about New York, about her career. She has her own life, her own dreams, and right now you need to rebuild our family's legacy. You need someone who understands this world." Who can help you navigate it? Someone like who? Molly Bradford's family has offered to invest in Turner Enterprises. Her father is willing to inject capital in exchange for a partnership. But he's old-fashioned. He'd need to see a future there, a connection between families. Ashton stared at his mother. You want me to use Molly to save the company? I want you to consider all your options. Victoria's eyes were desperate. Your father destroyed this family, Ashton. But you can rebuild it. You can make something good from these ashes. But you need to focus. You need to put aside personal feelings and think strategically. Stephanie is not a personal feeling. She's my future. Is she? Because she's leaving for New York eventually, and you'll be here picking up the pieces. Can your relationship survive that distance? That divergence? The seed of doubt planted itself deep. Over the next week, that seed grew. Ashton watched Stephanie pull away, protecting herself from his emotional unavailability. He saw the hurt in her eyes every time he cancelled plans or stayed late at the office. He felt the chasm widening between them, and his mother's words echoed, "Can your relationship survive this?" Then came the night that changed everything. Ashton worked late again, reviewing documents for the Nathan Hartley lawsuit. His mother had left him alone in the office, giving him space to think. Around midnight he took a break, opening his laptop to check emails. A notification popped up from the Atlanta Business Chronicle. Another article about Turner Heights. Stephanie's project was winning awards, getting national attention. Ashton clicked through to read it, pride swelling in his chest despite everything, and then he saw the photo. Stephanie at some industry event in New York, radiant in an emerald dress. But she wasn't alone. Standing beside her, his hand on the small of her back in a gesture Ashton recognized because he'd done it 1,000 times himself, was Jordan Pierce, her colleague, her friend, the man she'd mentioned casually in conversations but never emphasized. The caption read, "Architect Stephanie June and business partner Jordan Pierce celebrate Kendrick and Associates' latest acquisition." Business partner, his hand on her back. Her smile, genuine, happy, free of the strain she wore around Ashton lately. Ashton stared at the photo until it blurred. Stephanie had moved to New York a week ago, taken the job after their last fight, after he'd told her to go. She'd called him once to say she'd arrived safely. He'd been in a deposition and hadn't called back. And now here she was, with another man's hand on her back, smiling, like she hadn't just left the love of her life behind in Atlanta. The rational part of Ashton's brain knew this was innocent. Jordan was her colleague. The hand placement meant nothing. Business partners stood together at events. But the part of him that was drowning in grief and exhaustion and the wreckage of his father's lies saw something else. Proof that Stephanie was already moving on, that she'd realized Ashton was too broken to fix, that she'd found someone easier, someone whole. He closed the laptop, didn't call her, told himself she'd made her choice. What Ashton didn't know, couldn't know, was that at that exact moment, Stephanie was in her tiny New York apartment, staring at a positive pregnancy test, trying to figure out how to tell him. What he didn't know was that she'd call his office the next day, and his mother would answer, would tell her Ashton was in meetings all week, would promise to pass along the message. What he didn't know was that Victoria Turner, drowning in her own grief and desperate to save her family's legacy, would intercept that one critical message, would tell Stephanie that Ashton had asked for space, would suggest that maybe it was better to let him focus on rebuilding without the complication of a long-distance relationship. And Stephanie, hurt and pregnant, and staring at that photo of Ashton with Molly Bradford that had just been published in the society pages, a photo from some Turner Enterprises event where Molly stood beside him looking like she belonged, would make a choice too. She would stop calling, would convince herself that if Ashton wanted to reach her, he would tell herself that raising a child alone was better than forcing a man to choose between her and his obligations. Both of them made choices that week. Both of them gave up too soon. and both of them would spend the next 5 years believing the other had moved on, when the truth was they'd both been waiting for a phone call that never came. Chapter 5. The Secret She Carried. Stephanie June had always been strong. She'd survived being the only black girl in her architecture program, survived mansplaining clients and rooms full of men who dismissed her ideas, survived building a career in a field designed to exclude her. But sitting in her Manhattan apartment, staring at 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test, Stephanie didn't feel strong. She felt terrified. 2 months in New York, working brutal hours at Kendrick and Associates, trying to drown herself in blueprints so she wouldn't think about Ashton, trying to convince herself she'd made the right choice. And now this. Her phone sat on the bathroom counter. She'd tried calling Ashton's office yesterday, left a voicemail saying she needed to talk. Victoria had called back, not Ashton, his mother, saying Ashton was buried in depositions and meetings, that he'd specifically asked for space to focus. "He's not himself right now, dear," Victoria had said. "Perhaps it's better to give him time." The message was clear. Ashton didn't want to hear from her. Then Stephanie had seen the photo in the Atlanta Society pages. Ashton with Molly Bradford at some gala, looking every inch the power couple. The caption mentioned the rumored romance between the Turner and Bradford families. 2 months of silence. 2 months of watching him choose his family's legacy over what they'd built. Maybe Victoria was right. Maybe it was time to let go. Stephanie called Naomi instead. "I'm pregnant," she said when her sister answered, "and Ashton doesn't know, and I don't know what to do." Naomi arrived the next day with suitcases and fierce determination. "Tell me everything." Stephanie told her about the pregnancy, about Victoria's message, about the photo of Ashton with Molly. "That manipulative witch," Naomi seethed. "Stephanie, you have to try again. Call him directly." "I can't." Stephanie's voice was hollow. "He's moved on. What am I supposed to do? Show up pregnant and ruin everything he's trying to salvage? He has a right to know about his child. And I have a right to protect myself and this baby from rejection." Stephanie touched her stomach. "I saw that photo. He looked comfortable, like he'd already replaced me." What Stephanie didn't know was that photo had been taken at an event Ashton's mother forced him to attend. That Ashton had spent the entire evening thinking about her. Pride and pain kept them both silent. "I'm staying," Naomi said firmly. "You're not doing this alone." The pregnancy was hard. Stephanie worked through morning sickness, through exhaustion. Several times she considered quitting, going back to Atlanta, trying one more time. But then she'd see another photo, Ashton at another event, Molly at his side, and Stephanie would convince herself that the Ashton she'd loved was gone. She sent one email, 3 months pregnant, desperate and scared. "Ashton, I need to talk to you. It's important. Please call me. S." Victoria intercepted it, deleted it, told herself she was protecting her son from complications, from a woman who'd already moved to New York and was probably involved with Jordan Pierce. Stephanie never knew the email was intercepted. After that, she stopped trying. Hardy Turner June was born on a freezing January night. When the doctor placed her son on her chest, tiny, perfect, screaming with healthy lungs, Stephanie looked into eyes that were unmistakably Ashton's and broke down sobbing. "He looks just like him," she whispered. Raising Hardy alone was the hardest thing Stephanie had ever done. She juggled midnight feedings and morning meetings, client presentations and toddler tantrums. Jordan became a lifeline, showing up with coffee and babysitting offers. The business press occasionally ran photos of them together at industry events. Stephanie never saw these photos, never knew that in Atlanta, Ashton saw every single one and convinced himself she'd moved on. Hardy was happy, curious and chatty and full of energy. But even at 3 years old, he started asking the question that broke Stephanie's heart. "Where's my daddy?" "Your daddy is a good man," Stephanie would say. "He just doesn't know about you, baby." Why doesn't he know? How do you explain pride and silence and two people who loved each other but gave up too soon? Stephanie had convinced herself that Ashton knew about Hardy through some gossip network and had chosen not to be involved, that his silence was deliberate. It was easier to believe than the alternative, that one intercepted email had stolen everything. Hardy's 4th birthday came and went. That night, after Hardy fell asleep clutching a new stuffed T-Rex, Stephanie sat on her apartment balcony and stared at the Manhattan skyline. Her phone buzzed with an email from Kendrick and Associates. They wanted her to give the keynote address at Grandview University in Atlanta. Stephanie's first instinct was to decline. But then she thought about Hardy, about how maybe it was time to face the past. "This is a bad idea," Naomi said. "What if you see him?" "Then I see him," Stephanie said. "It's been 5 years. He's probably married to Molly by now." She was lying. But sometimes lies are the only way forward. Stephanie accepted the invitation and tried to convince herself she was ready. She wasn't. Nothing could have prepared her for walking onto that stage and seeing Ashton Turner in the audience, looking at her like his entire world had just ended and begun again. Nothing could have prepared her for knowing her son was backstage, about to walk into a revelation that would change everything. The past 5 years collapsed into nothing, and Stephanie knew with absolute certainty that everything was about to explode. Chapter 6. The Collision. The ceremony ended in chaos, families rushing toward graduates, cameras flashing, the energy of celebration thick in the air. Stephanie stood frozen on stage, her keynote speech notes clutched in trembling hands, watching Ashton Turner navigate the crowd. He moved like a man in a dream, his eyes locked on her with an intensity that made her forget how to breathe. Molly Bradford appeared beside him, oblivious, pulling him toward the stage. "Babe, come on! I want a photo with Stephanie June!" Molly's voice carried over the noise, bright and enthusiastic. "She's literally my idol." Stephanie's heart hammered against her ribs. She needed to get Hardy out of here, needed to grab her son and disappear before... Too late. Ashton was climbing the stage steps, Molly chattering beside him about architecture and design philosophy, and Stephanie had nowhere to run. "Miss June!" Molly extended her hand, practically vibrating with excitement. "I'm Molly Bradford, well, soon to be Molly Turner, and I just have to tell you, your work is incredible. The Meridian Tower changed how I think about urban design." Stephanie shook her hand mechanically, her entire focus on Ashton. He stood 2 feet away, silent, his face drained of color. "Thank you," Stephanie managed. "I appreciate that." "Can we get a photo? Ashton, take our picture." Molly thrust her phone at him, moving to stand beside Stephanie. Ashton took the phone with wooden movements. Through the camera lens, he looked at Stephanie, really looked at her, and she saw 5 years of grief and confusion and questions he couldn't ask crash across his face. The camera clicked. "Perfect." Molly retrieved her phone, already posting to social media. "Ashton, don't you think she's amazing?" "Stephanie has always been amazing," Ashton said quietly, and the weight in those words nearly broke her. Before Stephanie could respond, small feet pounded across the stage. "Mommy! Mommy, Aunt Naomi said I was very good at sitting still, but I wasn't really, 'cause I kept wiggling, and she said that's okay because sitting still is boring." Hardy stopped abruptly, noticing the strangers around his mother. Stephanie's world narrowed to this single moment. Her son, standing in the spotlight. Ashton, seeing him for the first time. The truth, unavoidable and devastating, written in every line of Hardy's face. Ashton stared at the child, at the dark brown eyes with amber flecks, the dimple in the left cheek, the nose that belonged to Ashton's grandmother, the jawline that would someday mirror his own. "Who's this?" Molly bent down to Hardy's level, smiling. "Hi there, what's your name?" "Hardy June." The boy stuck out his hand solemnly, the way Naomi had taught him. I'm 4 years old. Well, 4 and 3 months and lots of days, but Mommy says I don't need to count all the days because that's too many numbers. Molly laughed, shaking his hand. It's very nice to meet you, Hardy. But Ashton wasn't laughing. Ashton had gone absolutely still, his brain making calculations he couldn't stop. 4 years old. 5 years since Stephanie left. 9 months for pregnancy. The math was brutal and perfect. Ashton? Molly looked up at him, confused by his expression. You okay? I need a minute. His voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. Excuse me? He walked off the stage blindly, and Stephanie watched him go, her heart breaking all over again. Is he all right? Molly asked, concern creasing her face. Graduation ceremonies can be overwhelming, Stephanie said, years of practice keeping her voice steady. So many people. Yeah, he's been weird all day. Molly stood, still looking in the direction Ashton had disappeared. I should probably check on him, but seriously, Miss June, thank you for your incredible speech. You're an inspiration. She left, and Stephanie immediately scooped Hardy into her arms. We need to go, baby. But Aunt Naomi said there would be cake. We'll get cake later. Right now, we need to leave. Stephanie carried her son down the stage steps, searching for Naomi in the crowd. She found her sister near the exit, talking to someone Stephanie didn't recognize. Naomi, we need to go. Now. Naomi turned, took one look at Stephanie's face, and understood. What happened? He saw Hardy. He knows. Oh, Stephanie? The voice came from behind them, and Stephanie's entire body went rigid. She turned slowly to find Devon Matthews standing there, shock written across his face. Ashton's best friend, the man who'd been at every dinner party, every celebration, every moment of their relationship. Devon looked at Hardy, then at Stephanie, then back at Hardy. Jesus Christ, he breathed. Devon, that's Ashton's son. It wasn't a question. Stephanie, that's his son. People were starting to notice, to turn and stare. Naomi stepped closer, protective. This isn't the place, Naomi said firmly. Does he know? Devon demanded. Does Ashton know he has a son? Not until today, Stephanie said, her voice barely above a whisper. Why didn't you tell him? Stephanie, for God's sake, I tried. The words burst out of her, sharp and desperate. I called his office. I sent an email. His mother said he needed space, that he was with Molly now. What was I supposed to do, Devon? Force my way into his new life? Devon's face went pale. Victoria, what did Victoria tell you exactly? That Ashton was focused on rebuilding, that he'd asked for space, that Stephanie stopped, seeing something shift in Devon's expression. What? Ashton never asked for space. He's been... Devon ran his hands through his hair. Stephanie, did you send him anything in writing? An email? A letter? One email. 3 months after I moved to New York, he never responded. And you're sure you sent it? Yes, Doubt crept in. I sent it to his work email, the one I'd always used. Devon pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. What was the date? Stephanie told him, her heart starting to race. And the subject line? Need to talk. I kept it vague because I didn't want to tell him about the pregnancy in an email. Devon's face darkened as he scrolled through something. There's no record of it in his inbox. I have access to his email system through our partnership. Stephanie, that email never reached him. The world tilted. But I sent it. I know I sent it. I believe you, but someone deleted it before Ashton saw it. Devon looked at her, realization dawning. Victoria has administrative access to Ashton's email. She's had it since Richard died. Insisted on helping manage his communications during the crisis. Stephanie felt sick. She deleted my email? I don't know for certain, but... He stopped, his eyes widening as he looked past Stephanie's shoulder. She turned to find Ashton standing 10 feet away, having heard every word. And beside him, confusion morphing into horror, stood Molly Bradford. The auditorium seemed to go quiet, though hundreds of people still talked and laughed around them. Stephanie felt like she was underwater, everything muffled and distant, except for the pounding of her own heart. Hardy, sensing the tension, buried his face in Stephanie's neck. Molly spoke first, her voice shaking. "Someone want to tell me what's going on?" Ashton couldn't take his eyes off Hardy, off the child who had his face, his eyes, his entire genetic blueprint written in miniature. "Is he mine?" Ashton's voice cracked. "Stephanie, is that boy mine?" The question hung in the air, impossible to avoid. Stephanie shifted Hardy in her arms, feeling her son's small heart beating against her chest. She'd imagined this moment 1,000 times over the past 4 years, what she'd say, how she'd explain. But none of her rehearsed speeches prepared her for the devastation in Ashton's eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "His name is Hardy. He's 4 years old, and he's your son." Molly made a sound like she'd been punched. Ashton took a step forward, then stopped, his hands shaking. "How long have you known?" "Since I was 2 months pregnant." "And you never told me?" The words came out raw, broken. 5 years, Stephanie, 5 years, and you never—" "I tried." Stephanie's voice rose, drawing more attention. People were definitely staring now, phones coming out. "I called you, I sent an email. Your mother told me you needed space, that you were with Molly. What was I supposed to do?" "You were supposed to tell me I had a son." "You made your choice. I saw the photos, Ashton. You with Molly at every event, looking like the perfect couple. And I saw you," Ashton's voice cracked, "with Jordan Pierce, smiling like you'd already moved on, standing there in New York looking happy while I was drowning here. Jordan's my colleague, and Molly was a family friend my mother kept pushing at me." Ashton ran his hands through his hair. "We were both seeing ghosts, Stephanie, both convinced the other had moved on when we were just existing without each other." "You stopped calling," Stephanie said, tears streaming down her face. 2 months of silence and then nothing. "Because I thought you didn't want to hear from me. Because I was a mess and you deserved better, and every time I tried to dial your number, I convinced myself you were happier without me dragging you down." "I was never happier without you," Stephanie whispered. Molly's voice cut through their moment. "I'm standing right here, your fiancé. Remember me?" Ashton turned to her, guilt written across his face. "Molly, don't." She pulled the engagement ring off her finger. "I've known for months that you didn't love me, Ashton. I just didn't want to admit it. But watching you look at her, at your son, God, I was so stupid to think I could make you forget her." "You're not stupid. This is my fault." "No, it's mine for accepting a proposal from a man who was clearly still in love with someone else." Molly pressed the ring into his palm. "I hope you two figure this out. For that little boy's sake, if nothing else." She walked away, and several people in the crowd pulled out phones to record the drama. Devon stepped forward. "We need to move this somewhere private." But Hardy chose that moment to peek out from his mother's shoulder. "Are you my daddy?" he asked, his small voice cutting through everything. Ashton's face crumpled. He moved forward slowly, like approaching a wild animal, stopping a few feet from Stephanie and Hardy. "I didn't know about you," Ashton said, his voice breaking. "But yeah, buddy, I'm your daddy." Hardy studied him with serious eyes. "Why didn't you come before?" "Because I didn't know you existed. And that's the biggest mistake of my life. Do you want to know me now?" The question broke Ashton. He nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. Hardy reached out his arms. "You can hold me if you want. Mommy says I'm getting too big for carrying, but I'm not really." Ashton looked at Stephanie, asking permission. She nodded, and he took his son, held him for the first time, and the world fell away. Hardy was warm and real and perfect. He wrapped his small arms around Ashton's neck and whispered, "You're crying again." "Happy tears this time," Ashton managed. Security approached, asking them to move the reunion somewhere private. Devon led them to a faculty office, away from phones and stares. The door closed, and suddenly they were just 4 people, Ashton, Stephanie, Hardy and Devon, trying to make sense of 5 years of misunderstandings. "I sent an email," Stephanie said, 3 months after I left, telling you I needed to talk. "I never got it," Ashton said, still holding Hardy. "Devon, check my deleted folder. Check everything." Devon pulled out his laptop. 5 minutes later, he found it, in a folder marked Archived by Administrator. The date matched. The timestamp showed it had been moved to archive within an hour of arrival. "Victoria," Ashton said flatly. "My mother intercepted it." "She told me you needed space," Stephanie said, "that you were focused on rebuilding with Molly." "I wasn't with Molly until 6 months ago, and even then—" Ashton stopped. "Stephanie, I never stopped loving you. Every woman I saw, I compared to you. Every relationship failed because they weren't you." "Then why didn't you call?" "Because I convinced myself you'd moved on. Because I was drowning in my father's mess and I thought I'd just drag you down with me. Because I was a coward." He looked at their son. "And it cost me 4 years with him." Hardy wriggled out of Ashton's arms, going to his mother. "Mommy, can Daddy come home with us?" The innocence of the question shattered them both. "It's not that simple, baby," Stephanie said. "Why not? You said if Daddy knew about me, he'd want me. He knows now, so he can come home." 4-year-old logic, perfect and undeniable. Ashton and Stephanie looked at each other across the office. 5 years of silence and misunderstandings, and 2 people who'd loved each other enough to let go, but not enough to fight. "We need to figure this out," Ashton said. "For Hardy. He deserves both his parents." "I know," Stephanie said, "but I live in New York. You're in Atlanta. This isn't—" "Then I'll move." "Ashton, you can't just—" "Watch me," he said. "Stephanie, I lost you once because I chose obligation over love. I'm not making that mistake again. I'm not losing any more time with my son." But even as he said it, reality crashed in. Moving meant restructuring his company, dealing with his mother, figuring out custody arrangements. Nothing about this would be simple. "Let's take this one step at a time," Devon suggested. "Right now, Hardy knows his father. That's what matters. The rest, we'll figure out the rest." They left the office together, walking into an uncertain future. Cameras still flashed, people still stared. And somewhere in Atlanta, Victoria Turner's phone was ringing with calls from society pages and gossip columns, all asking the same question: who is Stephanie June, and why does her son look exactly like Ashton Turner? Chapter 7. The unraveling Ashton didn't go home that night. He sat in his Tesla in the Grandview University parking lot, the engine off, his hands gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping him tethered to reality. His son. He had a son, a 4-year-old child who existed in the world, who had his eyes and his grandmother's nose, who liked dinosaurs and trusted too easily, and probably 1,000 other things Ashton knew nothing about. 4 years of birthdays he'd missed. First words he'd never heard, midnight feedings and scraped knees and bedtime stories, all of it lived by Stephanie alone while Ashton had been an hour away, completely oblivious. Except he hadn't been oblivious. Not completely. His mother had known, had intercepted Stephanie's email, had actively kept them apart. His phone buzzed. "Devon, where are you?" "Still at the university." "It's been 3 hours, man. Come to my place. Rebecca made dinner. We need to talk." Ashton wanted to refuse, wanted to drive to Stephanie's hotel and demand answers, demand time with Hardy, demand everything he'd been robbed of. But Devon's voice carried the weight of 20 years of friendship. and Ashton was too shattered to argue. He drove to Devon's house on autopilot. Rebecca Matthews answered the door, her face gentle with sympathy. She pulled Ashton into a hug without speaking, and he stood stiffly in her embrace, unable to process kindness when his entire world had just imploded. "Devon's in the study," Rebecca said softly. "I'll bring coffee." The study smelled like leather and old books. Devon sat in his usual chair, a tumbler of whiskey already poured for Ashton on the side table. "Drink," Devon ordered. Ashton drank. "You want to tell me what's going through your head right now?" Ashton laughed, a hollow, broken sound. "I have a son, Devon, a 4-year-old son I knew nothing about. What the hell is supposed to be going through my head?" "Rage at your mother, probably. Confusion about Stephanie. Grief over everything you missed." "All of that." Ashton set down his glass before he threw it. "And guilt. So much guilt I can't breathe around it." "Why guilt?" "You didn't know. But I should have tried harder. When Stephanie stopped calling, I should have flown to New York. Should have shown up at her apartment. Should have fought for her instead of convincing myself she was better off without me." "Stop." Devon leaned forward. "You were drowning in grief and debt and legal battles. You made the best decisions you could with the information you had, which included believing my mother when she said Stephanie needed space." Ashton's voice turned bitter. "How stupid was I, Devon? How blind? You were trusting your mother during the worst period of your life. That's not stupid. That's human." Ashton stood, pacing. "I missed everything. His first steps, his first words, teaching him to ride a bike. Does he even know how to ride a bike? I don't know, Devon. I don't know anything about my own son." Rebecca appeared in the doorway with coffee, setting the tray down silently. She caught Ashton's eye and mouthed, "It's going to be okay." Ashton wished he could believe her. "What are you going to do?" Devon asked. "I don't know. Stephanie has a life in New York, a career. Hardy has friends, preschool. I can't just demand they uproot everything. Can you uproot your life? For my son, in a heartbeat?" Ashton sat back down, exhausted. "But it's more complicated than that. There's my mother, the company, Nathan's lawsuit. I can't just disappear to New York and leave everything unresolved." "Then resolve it." "It's not that simple." "Make it simple," Devon said firmly. "Ashton, your father's been dead for 5 years. You've spent that entire time cleaning up his messes, honoring his debts, trying to rebuild a legacy that was built on lies. When does it end? When do you get to live your own life?" The words hit like a physical blow. "Nathan's lawsuit could take years to settle," Ashton said quietly. "And if I leave now, the company will survive. You've got competent people. Hell, promote Greg to CEO. He's been running most of the day-to-day anyway." Devon paused. "The question isn't whether you can leave. It's whether you're brave enough to choose your son over your father's legacy." "That's not fair." "Life isn't fair. But you've got a second chance with the woman you love and a son who needs his father. Don't waste it because you're afraid of disappointing a dead man who disappointed you your entire life." Ashton stared at his best friend, the truth landing heavy in his chest. "I need to talk to my mother," Ashton said. "That's a terrible idea. I need to hear her explain why she destroyed my life." Devon recognized the tone. Nothing would stop Ashton when he sounded like that, cold, determined, ready to burn bridges. "Then I'm coming with you," Devon said, "because you're about to do something you can't take back, and you need a witness." They arrived at Victoria Turner's Buckhead mansion after midnight. The house was dark, except for one window, the library, where Victoria always went when she couldn't sleep. Ashton let himself in with his key, Devon following. Victoria sat in Richard Turner's old leather chair, a glass of wine in her hand, looking older than Ashton had ever seen her. A laptop sat open on the table beside her, the screen showing the Business Chronicle's homepage with a photo of Ashton holding Hardy. The headline read, Turner heir's secret son, 5 years of lies. I was wondering when you'd come, she said quietly. You knew. Ashton's voice was flat. About Stephanie's pregnancy. You intercepted her email. Victoria closed the laptop carefully. Yes. The admission hit harder than Ashton expected. Some part of him had hoped Devon was wrong, that there was an explanation. Why? Because you were drowning, Victoria said. Your father had just died. The company was collapsing. Nathan was threatening lawsuits. And Stephanie was in New York, starting a new life, probably with that Jordan Pierce everyone kept photographing her with. I couldn't watch you destroy yourself trying to maintain a relationship that was already over. It wasn't over. She was pregnant with my child. She'd left Ashton. She'd chosen New York over you. What was I supposed to think? You were supposed to tell me the truth. Ashton's voice cracked. You were supposed to let me make my own decisions about my own life. I was trying to protect you. From what? From being a father. From the woman I loved. He stepped closer, trembling with rage. Mother, I have a 4-year-old son I've never met. 4 years of his life that I missed because you decided you knew better than I did what I needed. Victoria stood, her composure finally breaking. I made a mistake. I know that now. But Ashton, you were falling apart. The company, the debts, Nathan, you were barely holding yourself together. I thought if you focused on rebuilding, if you let Stephanie go, you'd eventually find peace. I found nothing. 5 years of nothing because you took my choice away. I was grieving too. Victoria's voice rose. Your father had another family, another son. Our entire life together was a lie, and I was just trying to save something, to make sure you didn't end up like him, torn between 2 families. So you made sure I had no family at all. The words hung in the air, devastating in their truth. Devon cleared his throat. Mrs. Turner, did you intercept more than one email? No, just the one. Victoria's voice was small. After that, Stephanie never tried to contact him again. I thought she'd moved on, that my intervention had worked. Your intervention destroyed both their lives, Devon said quietly, and robbed Hardy of his father. Victoria sank back into her chair. I'm sorry. God, Ashton, I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't give me back the time I lost. Ashton looked at his mother, really looked at her, and saw a stranger, a woman so consumed by her own pain that she'd inflicted it on everyone around her. I don't know if I can forgive you for this. I understand. No, you don't. Ashton's voice was cold. You took my son from me. You manipulated Stephanie. You controlled my life because you couldn't control your own. And now I have to figure out how to be a father to a child who doesn't know me, how to rebuild trust with a woman who thinks I abandoned her, all while dealing with the fact that my own mother sabotaged my happiness. What can I do? Victoria whispered. How can I make this right? You can't. Ashton headed for the door. But you can start by staying away from Stephanie and Hardy until I decide whether I ever want you in their lives. Ashton, please. You want to earn forgiveness. Prove you've changed. Fine. But you do it on my terms. You apologize to Stephanie. Really apologize. Take full responsibility for what you did. You accept that Hardy is my son and that I'm going to be in his life no matter what, and you stop trying to control me. He walked out, Devon following. In the car, Devon said quietly, That was brutal. It needed to be. Ashton's hands shook on the steering wheel. She destroyed 5 years, Devon. 5 years I can never get back. I know, but eventually you'll have to decide whether holding on to that anger is worth losing your mother entirely. Maybe it is. They drove in silence. Then Devon asked, What about Stephanie? Ashton's jaw tightened. I don't know. She built a life without me. She has a career, friends, a whole world in New York. Why would she want me back now? Because you're Hardy's father. Because despite everything, I saw the way she looked at you today, like seeing you hurt and healed her at the same time. Or maybe it's too late. Maybe we're just two people who loved each other once and screwed it up beyond repair. Only one way to find out, Devon said. Fight for her. Show her you're serious about being in Hardy's life, in her life. What if she says no? Then at least you'll know you tried. Ashton drove through Atlanta's empty streets, his mind racing. Tomorrow, he'd call his lawyer, start paperwork for custody arrangements, begin the process of restructuring his life around a son he'd just discovered. But tonight, he let himself grieve, for the time he'd lost, for the family he'd missed building, for the woman he'd loved and lost and might never get back. And somewhere in a hotel room across town, Stephanie was doing the same. Chapter 8. The Boy Who Looks Like Him. Stephanie didn't sleep that night. She sat on her hotel balcony, watching Atlanta's skyline and trying to process the fact that Ashton knew. After 5 years of carrying this secret, it was out. And the look on his face when he'd held Hardy, like his entire world had shifted, that look was seared into her memory. You should try to rest, Naomi said, appearing with tea. Hardy's finally asleep. Stephanie took the tea but didn't drink it. Hardy spent 4 years without a father because I gave up, because I didn't fight hard enough. Stop! Naomi sat beside her. You did what you thought was right. Victoria manipulated both of you. This is not your fault. But I should have known, should have questioned why Ashton would completely ghost me. Stephanie's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. It's Ashton. I need to see Hardy tomorrow, need to talk to you, please. Her hands trembled as she read it. He wants to see Hardy tomorrow, Stephanie said. Are you going to let him? He's Hardy's father. I can't keep them apart. She looked at her sister. But I'm terrified. What if this is just shock? What if he realizes fatherhood is too complicated? You saw Ashton's face today. That man is destroyed. I don't think he's going anywhere. Stephanie texted back, Piedmont Park. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. Hardy likes the playground there. The response came immediately. Thank you. I'll be there. The next morning, Stephanie tried to explain something inexplicable to a 4-year-old. Remember the man from yesterday? Hardy nodded, chewing on his waffle. The crying man. Yes, his name is Ashton, and he's your daddy, Hardy. The waffle stopped halfway to his mouth. My daddy? The one you said loved me but didn't know about me? Yes, baby. Why didn't he know? Because some grown-up things got very complicated. But he knows now, and he wants to spend time with you. Is that okay? Hardy thought about it with serious concentration. Does he like dinosaurs? I don't know, you can ask him. Okay. And if he doesn't like dinosaurs, can we still keep him? Stephanie's heart cracked. Yeah, baby, we can still keep him. Ashton arrived 15 minutes early, clutching a bag from the toy store and looking like he'd barely slept. The resemblance between father and son was impossible to miss in daylight. Hardy noticed Ashton first. Mommy! The crying man is here! Ashton winced. Stephanie bit back a smile. Hi, Ashton said, approaching carefully. Hardy, right? Yep. Do you like dinosaurs? The question threw him. Yeah, I used to have a whole collection when I was your age. What was your favorite? Velociraptor. Hardy's face lit up. Mine too. They're the smartest and the fastest, and they hunt in packs. Ashton crouched to Hardy's level, pulling a toy from his bag, a detailed Velociraptor figure. I thought you might like this. Hardy took it with reverence. This is the best one I've ever seen. Can I play with you? Ashton asked. Okay, but I'm the T-Rex and you have to be the Triceratops because they're enemies. For the next hour, Stephanie watched Ashton Turner play dinosaurs with their son in a sandbox. Hardy chattered non-stop, showing Ashton all his favorite parts of the playground. Ashton listened to every word like it was the most important information he'd ever received. He's good with him, Naomi murmured, appearing with coffee. Yeah, he is. How are you feeling? Terrified, hopeful, angry, confused? Stephanie took the coffee. 5 years I raised Hardy alone because we were both too proud to fight for each other. You still love him? It wasn't a question, but Stephanie answered anyway. I never stopped. Hardy came running over, Ashton trailing behind. Mommy, Daddy says he has a big house with a pool. Stephanie's heart stuttered at Daddy, said so naturally. I'm sorry, Ashton said quickly. I should have asked first. It's okay. Stephanie looked at her son. Maybe another day, baby. We need to go back to New York tomorrow. I don't want to go back. I want to stay with Daddy. The words hung in the air, innocent and devastating. We should talk, Ashton said quietly. After Hardy's asleep tonight, figure out what this looks like. Stephanie nodded. Jordan's at the hotel. He can watch Hardy. Ashton's expression flickered. Jordan Pierce? Your colleague? My best friend, Stephanie corrected. That evening, Stephanie met Ashton at a quiet restaurant. I saw the photos, Ashton said without preamble, of you and Jordan. Those were work events. Jordan's my business partner, nothing more. And I saw you with Molly at every charity gala. Those were obligations. My mother kept pushing her at me, and I went along because I didn't care anymore, because no one was you. They sat in silence. We both made assumptions, Stephanie said quietly. Both convinced the other had moved on. I should have fought harder, should have shown up in New York. I should have tried more than one email. Where do we go from here? Ashton asked. Hardy needs stability. I can't just uproot him, and I can't ask you to. Ashton leaned back. But I also can't miss any more of his life. I need to be his father, and weekend visits aren't enough. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting I move to New York. Be there for Hardy every day. Stephanie's breath caught. That's insane. Your entire life is in Atlanta. My son is in New York. That's the only thing that matters. And what about us? The question escaped before she could stop it. I still love you, Ashton said simply, but I also know I can't just pick up where we left off. We're different people now. We have a son to think about. So what does that mean? It means we take this slow. We focus on Hardy, on building trust. And maybe somewhere in that process, we figure out if we can be more than that again. Stephanie wanted to say yes immediately, but she'd spent 5 years building walls. I need time, she said. Time to see if you're serious. Time to make sure Hardy's protected if things don't work out. I understand. Take all the time you need. And Ashton, if you're going to be in Hardy's life, you're all in. No halfway commitments. That little boy has spent 4 years asking about his father. I won't let him get attached just to lose you. I'm not going anywhere, Ashton said. I promise. Whatever happens between us, I'm Hardy's father. Nothing changes that. They left with more questions than answers, but also with something they hadn't had in 5 years. A chance. Over the next week, Ashton flew to New York twice, took Hardy to museums and playgrounds, read him bedtime stories, and learned his son was terrified of the dark but loved rainstorms. And Stephanie watched, guarded and hopeful, as the man she'd loved became the father her son deserved. But the question remained, could they ever be more than just parents to Hardy? Or had 5 years broken them beyond repair? Chapter 9. The Reckoning. The email arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, sent from Victoria Turner's personal account to both Ashton and Stephanie. I'm hosting a family dinner this Sunday. Your presence, all 3 of you, is requested. I owe you both an apology, and I owe my grandson a chance to meet his grandmother. Please consider coming. Victoria. Stephanie showed the email to Naomi, who immediately went into protective mode. Absolutely not. That woman destroyed 5 years of your life. But Stephanie was already typing a response. "We'll be there, but Victoria, if this is some attempt to manipulate us again, we're walking out. Hardy deserves to meet his grandmother on our terms." The response came within minutes. "Understood. Thank you." Ashton called that evening. "You don't have to do this. My mother doesn't deserve—" "She's Hardy's grandmother," Stephanie interrupted. "And if we're going to co-parent effectively, we need to deal with your family, including Nathan. Is he going to be there?" "Probably. My mother invited him. Something about healing the family. Then we face it together. For Hardy." Sunday arrived with oppressive humidity. Stephanie dressed Hardy in his best outfit, tiny khakis and a button-up shirt. "Why do I have to wear the scratchy clothes?" Hardy complained. "Because we're meeting some important people." "Like who?" "Your grandmother, and maybe some other family members." Hardy's face lit up. "I have more family." Stephanie's chest tightened. Her son had spent his whole life with just her and Naomi. "Yes, baby, you have more family." They arrived at the Buckhead mansion together. Ashton had insisted on picking them up. Stephanie felt transported back 5 years to dinners when she'd thought she belonged here. Ashton met them at the door, crouching to Hardy's level. "You ready for this, buddy? Is your house this big?" "This is my mother's house. I don't live here anymore." They entered to find a room full of tension. Victoria stood by the fireplace, looking older and more fragile. Devon and Rebecca sat on the sofa, clearly uncomfortable. And in the corner stood a young man who looked disturbingly like Ashton. "Nathan," Ashton said, his voice tight. "I didn't think you'd actually show." "Grandmother insisted," Nathan said. His eyes swept over Stephanie and Hardy with barely concealed resentment. "So this is the secret family everyone's talking about." Hardy pressed closer to Stephanie's leg, overwhelmed. Victoria stepped forward, her eyes locked on her grandson. "Hardy, I'm your grandmother." "You're the lady who made mistakes," Hardy said with brutal honesty. "Daddy said you said sorry, but you have to prove it." The room went silent. Victoria's composure cracked. She sank into a chair, tears streaming. "You're absolutely right, sweetheart. I did make mistakes, very big ones." "Did you say sorry to Mommy?" "Not yet, but I will." Hardy looked at his mother for guidance. Stephanie nodded, and Hardy approached cautiously. "I like your necklace," he said. "It's shiny." Victoria touched the pearls. "These were your great-grandmother's. Would you like to see them?" "Okay." As Hardy examined the pearls, Stephanie felt Ashton's hand find hers. Nathan scoffed. "This is touching, but can we talk about the actual issue?" "Which is?" Ashton's voice was dangerous. "Child support, custody, the fact that you have a secret son who might have inheritance claims." "Hardy is not a secret," Stephanie said coldly. "He's a child, and this conversation isn't appropriate in front of him." "Then maybe we should discuss it privately," Nathan suggested, "because your sudden appearance raises questions about motives." Ashton moved so fast, Devon had to grab his arm. "Don't you dare imply—" "I'm stating facts. She shows up after 5 years with a kid who conveniently looks exactly like you. How do we know he's yours without a paternity test?" The room exploded. Stephanie pulled Hardy close, covering his ears as adults erupted into shouting. Devon restrained Ashton. Rebecca was on her feet. Victoria looked stricken, but it was Hardy's voice that cut through the chaos. "Stop yelling!" Everyone froze. Hardy's face was red, tears streaming. "Why is everyone always yelling? I just wanted to meet my grandmother." The sound of a 4-year-old sobbing broke something in the room. Stephanie immediately picked him up, heading for the door. "We're leaving." "Wait." Victoria's voice was thick with tears. "Please, this isn't what I wanted." "Then what did you want?" Stephanie turned, fury in her eyes. "Another chance to control Ashton's life? To interrogate me? To subject my son to your family's toxicity?" I wanted to apologize, Victoria said. To you, to Ashton, to Hardy, for what I did. Nathan made a disgusted sound. This is pathetic. Get out, Ashton said flatly. Excuse me? You're not family, Nathan. You're a bitter stranger who shares some DNA. Until you can show up without accusations, you're not welcome. Nathan grabbed his jacket and left, slamming the door. The silence was deafening. Hardy hiccuped against Stephanie's shoulder. I don't like that man. Neither do I, buddy, Ashton said, touching his son's back. I'm sorry. This wasn't supposed to happen. Victoria stood, hands shaking. Stephanie, I need to say something, and I need you to hear it. Stephanie waited, Hardy still clinging to her. I didn't intercept your email to protect Ashton, Victoria continued. I did it to protect myself. I was so angry at Richard for his double life, so terrified of losing control, that I destroyed yours. I saw you as a threat to my influence, so I removed you. The raw honesty shocked everyone. I told myself you'd moved on, that the photos of you with Jordan Pierce meant you were happy. I convinced myself I was doing everyone a favor. Victoria wiped her eyes. But I was just a grieving woman who couldn't stand that my son had found something real when everything in my life had turned out to be a lie. Ashton stared at his mother, seeing her clearly for the first time. I don't expect forgiveness, Victoria said. But Stephanie, I need you to know I destroyed something precious because I was in pain, and I will spend the rest of my life regretting it. Stephanie set Hardy down carefully. You kept Ashton from his son. You lied to both of us. You stole 5 years. I know. And now you want absolution? No. Victoria's voice was steady despite her tears. I want you to know the truth, that I was wrong, that my grief doesn't excuse what I did, and that if you choose to never let me know my grandson, I'll understand. Hardy tugged on Stephanie's hand. Mummy? Can grandmother stay? Baby, this is complicated. But she said sorry. You always say when people say sorry and mean it, we should give them a chance. Hardy looked at Victoria. Do you mean it? More than anything, Victoria whispered. Then she can stay. Hardy's logic was simple, but no more yelling. Stephanie looked at Ashton, a silent question passing between them. Ashton crouched beside his son. Buddy, sometimes sorry isn't enough. Sometimes people hurt us so badly that we need time before we can trust them again. But she's family, Hardy said. You said family is important. Family is important, but family has to earn trust. Ashton looked at his mother. Grandmother made very big mistakes. It's going to take a long time before we can be a real family again. Victoria nodded. I understand. But, Ashton continued, if she's willing to prove she's changed, really prove it, then maybe someday we can get there. How do I prove it? Victoria asked. Therapy, Stephanie said firmly. You manipulated your son's life because you were drowning in grief. If you want to be in Hardy's life, you need to deal with your own trauma first. I'll start tomorrow. And you need to respect boundaries, Ashton added. No more interfering. No more manipulation. If you disagree, you say it to my face. Agreed. And you need to understand something very clearly. Stephanie's voice was steel. Hardy is my son. I make the decisions about his well-being. If you ever try to undermine me, you're done, permanently. I understand. Hardy tugged on Victoria's sleeve. Can I see the rest of your house now? Victoria laughed through her tears. Yes, sweetheart. Let me show you. As grandmother and grandson walked toward the hallway, the remaining adults stood in uncomfortable silence. Devon cleared his throat. Well, that was intense. Ashton sank into a chair. I need a drink. Stephanie sat beside him, maintaining careful distance. That was brave. What you said to your mother. It was necessary. The dinner that followed was awkward but civil. Hardy charmed everyone with dinosaur facts. Devon and Rebecca helped bridge silences. Victoria was careful, measured, clearly terrified of saying the wrong thing. As they prepared to leave, Victoria pulled Stephanie aside. "I know I have no right to ask this," Victoria said quietly, "but please, please give Ashton a real chance, not just as Hardy's father, but as a partner. He's loved you for 6 years. Don't let my mistakes cost you both a future." "That's rich, coming from you." "I know, but I've watched my son grieve you for 5 years, and now I'm watching him come back to life." Victoria stopped. "I destroyed one chance for you both. Don't let pride destroy the second one." Stephanie wanted to be angry, but watching Ashton crouch down to zip Hardy's jacket, seeing the gentle way he smoothed their son's hair, Stephanie felt her walls crack. "I'll think about it," she said. In the car, Hardy fell asleep almost immediately. Ashton drove them back to the hotel in comfortable silence. "Thank you," he said as they pulled up, "for giving my mother a chance, for bringing Hardy." "Don't thank me yet. We still have a lot to figure out." "I know. Custody arrangements, visitation schedules." "Not tonight," Stephanie interrupted. "Tonight, let's just be grateful we survived." Ashton smiled. "Fair enough." He helped carry a sleeping Hardy upstairs. Stephanie walked him to the door. "Ashton?" "Yeah? I'm glad you're moving to New York. Hardy needs you." She paused. "And I think maybe I need you too, to figure out how to be parents together." "Just for Hardy?" Stephanie met his eyes. "I don't know yet. Ask me again in 6 months." "I'll be there in 6 months. And 6 months after that. And every day after." Ashton's voice was quiet but firm. "I'm not going anywhere, Stephanie. Whether we end up together or just as co-parents, I'm in this for life." "Good," she whispered, "because that's what Hardy needs." Ashton left, and Stephanie stood in the doorway watching him go. 5 years ago, they'd given up too easily. This time, they'd have to fight for trust, for forgiveness, for the chance to build something real from the ruins. And maybe, just maybe, they'd succeed. Chapter 10. The Choice. Ashton Turner stood in his penthouse at 6 in the morning, staring at documents that would change his life. Custody agreement signed, Manhattan office lease finalized, letter of resignation from Turner Enterprises Atlanta board written, trust fund for Hardy Turner June established. On his phone, a text from Stephanie sent at midnight. "Hardy asked if you're really moving to New York or if this is like when he asked for a puppy and I said, 'We'll see,' which means no. I need to know what to tell him." Ashton typed back immediately, "I'm really moving. I've already signed a lease. Tell him his dad keeps his promises." The response came quickly. "Okay, he'll be happy. See you next week." Not, "I'll be happy," just acknowledgement. Ashton picked up the finger painting Hardy had made, 2 stick figures holding hands under a crooked sun, labeled Daddy and Me. He'd hung it on his refrigerator, looked at it every morning, let it remind him why he was doing this. The phone rang. "Devon, you're really doing this, moving to New York. Lease is signed, movers come Thursday. The board is losing their minds. Let them, Greg can handle it." Ashton paused. "I spent 5 years cleaning up my father's mess, Devon. I'm done sacrificing my life for a dead man's mistakes. And Stephanie, we're taking it slow, focusing on Hardy. But you're still in love with her. Doesn't matter. She needs time, needs to see I'm serious about being Hardy's father before we can think about—" He stopped. "Maybe we'll never get back what we had. Maybe we're just going to be co-parents." "And you're okay with that?" "I have to be. Hardy's the priority now." 3 days later, Ashton knocked on Stephanie's Manhattan apartment door. She answered in bare feet and an old Columbia t-shirt, looking exhausted and beautiful. "You're early," she said. "Couldn't sleep. Wanted to see Hardy before preschool. He's eating breakfast. Fair warning. He's in a mood because I wouldn't let him wear his dinosaur costume to school." Ashton found his son at the kitchen table, arms crossed, glaring at cereal. "Hey, buddy!" "Daddy!" Hardy's mood evaporated. "Mommy says I can't wear my T-Rex costume." That's because costumes are for home and special occasions, Ashton said, sitting beside him. But this weekend we'll have a dinosaur day. You can wear your costume all day and we'll go to the museum. Really? Really? But only if you're good at school and listen to your mom. Hardy considered this, then nodded. Okay, deal. Stephanie watched from the doorway, something unreadable in her expression. After Hardy left for preschool with Naomi, Stephanie made coffee for both of them. You're good with him, Stephanie said. I'm learning, making mistakes. We all make mistakes, she paused. Your apartment, where is it? 6 blocks from here. Close enough to see Hardy regularly, far enough to give you space. That's thoughtful. I meant what I said, Stephanie. I'm here for Hardy, whatever that looks like. And what about us? The question came out before she could stop it. Ashton met her eyes. What about us? You've restructured your entire life, moved to a new city, given up control of your company. Stephanie's voice was quiet. What if you realize you made a mistake? What if you resent us? I won't. You can't know that. I know. Ashton reached across the table, then pulled his hand back. Stephanie, I'm not expecting us to pick up where we left off. I know we have work to do, trust to rebuild. I know you've spent 5 years building walls, and those walls don't come down overnight. Then what are you expecting? Honestly? I don't know. Maybe we co-parent successfully and that's it. Maybe we become friends. Maybe... He stopped. Maybe someday we figure out if what we had can exist again. But right now, I'm just trying to be Hardy's father. Stephanie's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I want to believe you, but I'm terrified of getting hurt again. I know, and I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to let me earn it. How long is that going to take? However long you need. Ashton's voice was steady. A month, a year, 5 years. I'm not going anywhere, Stephanie. I'm Hardy's father. That means I'm in your life permanently, whether we're together or not. They sat in silence, the weight of unfinished business hanging between them. I see a therapist now, Stephanie said suddenly. Started after you found out about Hardy. She says I push people away before they can leave me. Are you pushing me away? I'm trying not to. But it's hard, Ashton. When the last time I let someone in, I ended up pregnant and alone. I wasn't there because I didn't know, not because I didn't want to be. I know that intellectually, but emotionally, she stopped. Emotionally, I'm still that terrified woman who was told you'd moved on. That version of me is screaming at me to run. What does the current version want? Stephanie looked at him. At the exhaustion in his eyes, the determination in his jaw, the way he'd shown up every day for 3 weeks without asking for anything. She wants to believe this is real, Stephanie whispered. She wants to believe we could build something from all this damage. Then let's start small. Focus on Hardy. Build trust as co-parents. And maybe along the way, we figure out if we can be more. What if we can't? What if we try and fail? Then we fail. But at least we'll know we tried, and Hardy will still have 2 parents who love him. Ashton paused. Stephanie, I'm not afraid of failing with you. I'm afraid of not trying and spending the rest of my life wondering what if. Stephanie's phone buzzed, a text from the preschool asking her to pick up Hardy early. He'd told his entire class about his dad moving to New York. She showed Ashton the text and they both smiled. He's so excited you're here, Stephanie said. I'm excited I'm here too. Ashton stood. I should let you get back to work. I'll see you this weekend for Dinosaur Day. Yeah, Dinosaur Day. At the door, Ashton turned back. Stephanie? Yeah? Thank you for letting me be his father, for giving me this chance. You're welcome. Just don't make me regret it. I won't, I promise. He left, and Stephanie stood in her doorway, watching him walk away. 5 years ago, she'd watched him choose obligation over love. Now she was watching him choose their son over everything else. Maybe that was enough for now. Maybe trust was built in small moments, in kept promises and consistent presence and dinosaur weekends. Maybe love wasn't about grand gestures or perfect timing. Maybe it was about showing up every day, even when it was hard. Stephanie closed the door and looked around her apartment. Hardy's toys scattered across the floor, crayon drawings taped to walls, the beautiful chaos of single motherhood. Soon that chaos would include Ashton, weekly dinners, shared custody, co-parenting meetings and birthday parties where they'd navigate being together but not together. It wouldn't be easy, but looking at the calendar on her fridge, where Hardy had circled Dinosaur Day with Daddy in red marker with approximately 50 exclamation points, Stephanie thought maybe it would be worth it. Her phone buzzed. Ashton. Forgot to mention, my mother wants to FaceTime with Hardy once a week. Supervised. If you're comfortable. Stephanie typed back, let's start with once a month. See how it goes. Fair, thank you. Don't thank me. Just keep being the father Hardy deserves. I will. Promise. Stephanie set down her phone and stared out the window at Manhattan's skyline. Somewhere in this city, 6 blocks away, Ashton was unpacking boxes in an apartment he'd leased sight unseen. Somewhere in preschool, Hardy was probably still talking about dinosaurs and his dad. And somewhere in Atlanta, Victoria Turner was sitting in her first therapy session, finally facing the damage her grief had caused. Everything was uncertain, messy, complicated. But for the first time in 5 years, Stephanie felt something she'd thought was lost forever. Hope. Not the naive hope of their early relationship, when everything felt easy and destined, but the hard-won hope of 2 people who'd lost each other, found each other again, and were choosing, slowly, carefully, to build something new from the ruins. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, it was something better. It was real. And that, Stephanie thought, was enough to start with.